26 years ago, in my classroom, a boy told me I was fat. I was only 11 years old. At that moment, my childlike innocence was gone and I became fixated on food and body weight. I started restricting my diet and eating only a few digestive biscuits because back then they were marketed as a health food that's high in fiber, and I could last for only a few days before the inevitable binge happened. I would go through a whole jar of Nutella in a single binge. But that's not even the worst part. Things got really dark when I hit 17 years old and I ballooned up to 137 pounds on only a 5-foot frame. I stopped going out and I didn't even want to go to my graduation ceremony. So I just showed up for my degree, but I didn't go to the celebrations. It was bad. But my yo-yo dieting, food focus, and constant preoccupation with body weight was far from over. Over the next decade, I kept trying to find food freedom by following things like a keto diet and then a carnivore diet. And every once in a while, I would feel like I had figured it out, but then I would binge again, and that would destroy me psychologically. It wasn't until I started applying what I had learned, doing my dissertation on food addiction and raising baseline dopamine levels, that my food focus finally resolved itself. I remembered learning that the cause of food cravings and food addiction is a destruction in the dopamine centers in the brain. Specifically, addictions or a history of uncontrollable junk food consumption destroy the dopamine receptors in our brain, also known as D2 receptors. You see, dopamine makes us feel good, but only when it attaches to its receptor in the brain, the D2 receptor. There are a lot of receptors for dopamine in our brain. There's D1, D2, D3, D4, D5, but only D2 is the one that is most heavily implicated with addictions. It's like a lock and key situation. When dopamine is released from a brain cell, it has to attach to a D2 receptor on the cell surface of an adjacent brain cell. The problem was that since I had a sugar addiction history, when I would release dopamine in my brain, it did not have enough D2 receptors for the dopamine to attach to, so it was as if I did not have much dopamine in my brain. That is when I realized that I had to treat the root cause and fix the brain damage once and for all. How did I fix the number of D2 receptors in my brain? I started exercising outside my comfort zone. I added in visualizations, specifically energy and training visualizations, which are two terms that I introduced to differentiate between the different types of visualizations and how both are critically important to raise D2 receptors. And I also added in the stopwatch technique, which I talk about in a previous YouTube video that I will make sure I link at the end of this YouTube video so you can check it out. And that is how I managed to lose 30 pounds and maintain it, and I no longer yo-yo diet with my weight. And when I realized that the vast majority of people who struggle with their weight have the same problem, it's a destruction in the D2 receptor numbers, I wrote guides to explain my protocol, and you can find them in the fitness bundle on my website at DrZALDIVAR.com/shop. The fitness bundle has the 3 main guides that include all the information. The first guide is the Dopamine Brain Guide, which outlines my brain rehab protocol that focuses mainly on the type of exercise that I used, because not any exercise is going to raise your D2 receptor numbers. It has to be outside your comfort zone. The second guide, Monster Mindset Guide, includes the visualizations and the way that I develop them, and I explain the difference between an energy versus a training visualization and how both are very important to raise D2 receptor numbers. And the third guide is Dopamine Body, which includes the calorie tracking technique that I used to ensure that I created a caloric deficit, and also the adjustments that I had to make over time to make sure I broke through any plateau. If you are struggling with similar issues, feel free to reach out for my one-on-one coaching on DRZALDIVAR.com/coaching. I highly recommend the 12-week coaching program because it locks you in a 3-month of one-on-one coaching with me for an hour every single week, plus unlimited email support. That is really what it takes to completely change your habits and reset your D2 receptors. Not only can we reset our D2 receptor numbers, but we can raise them as far as we want. And so I'm always working on raising them higher and higher, because at every new level that I unlock, I discover so many benefits in all of my life, not just with food freedom, but more importantly for me at this stage is productivity, anxiety relief, memory, focus, and discipline. And if you reach the end of this YouTube video, I will send you a free copy of my diet, the 30-day carnivore diet challenge guide, when you sign up to my newsletter at DRZALDIVAR.com/newsletter. Do you have to be a carnivore for the dopamine raising protocol to work? Absolutely not. But it is helpful to choose a diet that is not highly palatable so that you don't continue to destroy D2 receptors by eating addictive foods. We have to find a diet that's bland, that is delicious, but in its natural form, not in an ultra processed way. So things like if it fits your macros, those kinds of diets are very tricky. You can still raise your baseline dopamine levels, but it would just take longer to achieve that if you want to stick to and if it fits your macros or IIFYM diet approach. If you enjoyed this kind of content, let me know by giving this YouTube video a thumbs up, subscribing to this channel, and hitting that little notification bell icon so YouTube alerts you every time I post a new video. Also, if you know somebody who is struggling with addictions, which are all driven by this type of damage to the D2 receptors in the brain, feel free to share this YouTube video with them, and maybe you can change their life once and for all. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.